one of the worst drunks I'd ever have. I woke up and I was just splitting headache, and I was hungover beyond belief. And I heard a voice, and I know for a fact it was the voice of God. And he said, "James, you're not meant to die like this. I have a purpose for you and a calling for your life, and you are not going to go out like this." And I kid you not, it was like clear as day, and I knew it was the voice of God.
Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for watching another YouTube video here on our YouTube channel and also podcast. So we do interviews around self-development. We do it around fitness. We do it about faith and money. And with individuals that have made crazy transformation and they are performing at a highest level. And speaking of higher levels, I want to introduce today's guest of honor, and it's James Poirier. And as I was mentioning on my Instagram, I ran into James because of a good friend of mine, Patrick Pogan. And Patrick was a guest on your podcast, and I was able to connect dots and see your transformation, man. And it's been amazing to see, where you come from to where you're at now, just mentally and physically, the changes you made. So with this being said, brother, I just want to give you a chance to introduce yourself, and then we'll go from there.
Awesome, Julio. Thank you for the kind introduction, man. I really appreciate you having me on here today. So my name is James Poirier. I am a health and fitness coach. I have a coaching program in which I work with entrepreneurs and high performers, ultimately setting them up for success to feel their best. The reason what kind of started that was being surrounded by people like yourself, Julio, who are high performers and entrepreneurs, who are go-getters, world changers. And what I noticed is people in this space were so focused on outwardly giving and serving, so much so that they actually weren't taking care of themselves, right? They weren't working out, they weren't taking care of the body. And as you and I both know, that is a vital component to making an impact to the world and optimizing your performance out there in the marketplace. So that's kind of my niche and the clients that I work with. And then I also have a podcast, as you mentioned, called The Common Thread, in which I interview, again, entrepreneurs, high performers. And I really figure out what are the commonalities, what is the thread that binds all these successful people and what makes them all alike. So that's what I'm up to today.
Yeah, I resonate a lot with that. And I believe what you just said about us being our biggest asset is so true for those that want to perform at the highest level. I mean, you got to take care of yourself first before you can take care of others, right?
100%, yeah.
And that's something that everybody should live by. And by finding the common denominators or factors, they unify people that are trying to achieve new levels is huge, man. And that's why I resonate so much with that, with what you're doing, because I know that you're kind of after basically the same, what makes someone great, literally. Yeah. And so I know that you have been through a lot. And so I want to get into that now.
Sure.
Let's tell me a little bit about, your beginnings. I know that, what makes someone want to do better, it's either crazy adversities when they were little or good role models in their lives. And so I just wanted to find out a little bit about, what created that mindset in you. And I know that there was some rough moments in your childhood and, when you were a youth. We'll get into that later, but just kind of like the beginning, how your family raised you, how was your environment, and what do you think got you to where you're at now?
Yeah, it's a great question, Julio. So you mentioned something too about the stark contrast. And I think a lot of people that I look up to and people that are where they are today, for the reason why somebody is so passionate about health, for example, is because, at least for me, is I knew what it was like to be so unhealthy and to be so sick. And so I had the context of what it was like on the opposite end of the spectrum, and I knew I did not want to be there. So that's really kind of how it relates to my story. Is growing up, I can't say I had bad parents. I really did have loving parents who did their best. However, I was not introduced to, I guess you could say, the proper outlets to release my energy. I was surrounded by a lot of kids. I was a troublemaker ever since I was a little kid. I was just, I had high energy and I had a lot of ambition and drive, and I didn't realize it at the time. Looking back on my life as a child, I so desperately wanted to fit in, and I never could. No matter where I went, I would get kicked out of different schools. I would get in fights. I would always be the outlier, the outcast. And for so long, I chased wanting to fit in. And then I realized, in hindsight, I was never meant to fit in. I was always meant to be a leader. I was always meant to stand out. However, that came with a lot of costs, and it came with a lot of prices growing up, is because internally, I had this belief system that I was broken, that I didn't fit in, that I was not enough, that I wasn't lovable. And so, and that, to take that back a little bit, because I think this doesn't get talked about quite as much. Again, upon further personal development, therapy, and a lot of inner work, I realized that a lot of that came from early abuse, whether it's physical abuse, sexual abuse, verbal abuse, emotional abuse. And so I was coping with those things the best that I could with the tools that I had. And a lot of the tools that I used, I was introduced to drugs and alcohol at a very young age. So about 10, 11 years old, again, I hung out with kids that were also partiers, and they had access to alcohol and drugs. And so when I got introduced to those, it was a coping mechanism. It was a medicine to ease that inner turmoil and that pain that I was feeling. And for the first time ever, when I took that drink and when I did that drug, I was actually able to feel comfortable in my own skin. I no longer was obsessed with what people thought about me. I feel like I was then the life of the party. I felt I was cool. I was accepted. And, I honestly fell in love with that. It was my solution at the time. And so I chased that for so long. And although it gave me a temporary sense of relief, it came with a lot of consequences. I started to get into a lot of trouble. I was in and out of jail, in and out of the hospital, and it just continued to progress and got worse and worse and worse. And it wasn't until about 6 years ago today that I hit a rock bottom. I hit a point where the consequences were so bad. And without going into too much of the details of my story, I was left with me, myself, the bottle. I was drinking myself to death in a riverbed with homeless people. And I knew that my days were numbered. I was limited on the days that I had left on this earth, because if I was going to continue to drink the way that I did, it was only a matter of time before I either went to prison, I overdosed, I died, or something worse. So I woke up one morning, and I remember it clear as day. And I had one of the worst drunks I'd ever have. I woke up and I was just splitting headache, and I was hungover beyond belief. And I heard a voice, and I know for a fact it was the voice of God. And he said, "James, you're not meant to die like this. I have a purpose for you and a calling for your life, and you are not going to go out like this." And I kid you not, it was like clear as day, and I knew it was the voice of God. And so what I did that day is I went over, I rode my bike to a local, recovery meeting, and it wasn't easy. It was one day at a time. I just continued to show up day after day after day, and slowly that pain that I was running away from for so long, it started to go away, and I started to develop a relationship with God, and most importantly, I also developed a relationship with myself. I became okay with the man in the mirror. I began to work on a lot of that trauma and that pain. And the rest is history, man. Every single day, I'm definitely not perfect, but I strive to continue to grow every single day. So that's kind of a nutshell.
That's awesome. And I do see that growth in you, and not just physically, but definitely spiritually. Just having that, just like such a faithful heart, of like wanting to do better. And coming from where you come from, it does take a lot of, fighting your mind and fighting your doubts to be able to come out of that, Yep. And something you said as you were telling your story is, really understanding yourself, like I feel like you were mentioning how, like you were noticing these patterns in you, and you realized, you were going the wrong path. Thankfully, God touched you, and you were able to, recognize what was the best way out, and sure. Trust God ultimately, because a lot of people might have the encounter, but might not do something about it. So yeah, I give you props for all that, my friend. And I always mention this metaphor of the shark and the fish tank, and I think we all have that, either a shark that's trying to get to us or pulling us, right? And that's why I always mention either,
interesting, yeah,
the adversity of, the adversity that kind of motivates you, like, this is not me, I'm meant to do better, or that person that you're looking after, or that motivation, or that something, that vision that you're trying to pursue. So tell me a little bit about, I know this story up to now, in a sense of like where you at now, but tell me that switch moment for you. I know you had that moment when God, kind of touched you and spoke to you, but I feel like we all have that, like being sick or of being sick, know what I mean? Was that moment when you were with homelessness, I guess, or was that, maybe how people were looking at you, or was that how you were looking at yourself? How was that internal switch for you? Like, hey, you know what? Like, no, like, this is not going to be me.
Yeah, that's a great question. And I think there's not really one switch. I think it's a series of switches. And you brought up something earlier that's a great point, which is that that was not my first, I call it a moment of clarity, right? It's a moment after the drink subsides, or whatever it is, that the kind of the chaos subsides, and it's just, you're left with you and yourself. And in those moments, when, the way I like to look at it is when you quiet your mind enough, it's quiet enough to hear the voice of God, right? One of my favorite expressions is, the enemy, the devil, has a loud, boisterous voice, and the God is a very calm, quiet whisper, right? And so in order for me to quiet my mind enough to hear God's whisper, that's what I call a moment of clarity. So that time in 2015, it wasn't the first time that I've had a moment of clarity. I've had hundreds, but the thing is, I took action in that moment. And I think that's the biggest difference of when we have that, that tugging on our heart, we know we should be doing something, we have a calling. The question is, do we take action on it, or do we just stuff it and avoid it and move on? And so that was the time. And then to answer your question, yeah. So I mean, there was a couple turning points in my life where I look at, there was my life before, and then there was my life after. That was a big one. Another one was when I got involved into a personal development program. It's called the Ascension Leadership Academy here out of San Diego, California. And it's an emotional intelligence course. And it was just a completely life-changing experience, because the pinnacle of what they teach in this program is radical personal responsibility, is taking ownership for our mind, for our thoughts, for our emotions, and recognizing that life is not happening to us, but rather it's happening for us. And the most successful people in life, they're people who take responsibility for where they're at in their life. And they realize if I want to change something, it's up to me to change it, right? And so it was a combination of having that epiphany of just how powerful we are, and then also being surrounded with like-minded people that really changed everything. So hope that answers your question.
I got so many things. So that's so awesome. The fact that you say, it's not, I heard this so many times, it's not the knowledge, it's not the wisdom, it's not the information, right? It's the execution that
yes,
whatever you do with that, right? Sure. And I believe 100% in that. And I was going to say something else, and I really missed like that second topic I was going to talk about, but I'm so intrigued. And I know that you talked a lot about God in this process, because I feel that definitely it was a holy moment in your life for you to come from one spectrum of life of distraction, depression, and whatnot, to a moment of like growth and vision, and be able to see, of clarity. So tell me, how's it been, the journey with God? Because did you know God since you were little, or was it something that you got to know as you were maybe drinking, or how was that journey with God?
Yeah, so like a lot of people, I was introduced to church as a child. It was more so, the parents would get together on Sunday, everyone puts on their happy face, and we go to church. And as soon as I was old enough to really start making my own decisions, right around adolescent, teenage years, late junior high, early high school, The second I had any sort of say in it, any freedom, I kind of went the opposite way and I rebelled, because again, it was something that I didn't feel like I had a choice in it. It was more so like, hey, this is what you're going to do.
Of course, yeah.
And so there wasn't really a sense of, this is my idea. It was more so, this is something my parents told me to do. And I associated God and religion with, well, it's just another thing that my parents want me to do. So what I did was I completely went a 180. And it was right around the time that I started drinking and partying. I said, you know what, anything that has to do with that, like, I'm going to push it away. I'm going to do my own thing. And so I kind of went the opposite direction, and I went completely rebellious for a very long time. And I thought I was agnostic or atheist, which wasn't true. It just was kind of a lie I was telling myself, because deep down inside of me, there was a fundamental belief that there is a God, there is somebody who is in charge of the whole entire universe, right? So, but I wasn't reintroduced into him until, again, when I had that moment of clarity, and when I had that second chance of life, because I knew there was no possible way. It had to be something greater than myself. It was a higher power. There was something out there watching over me, and that had my best interest in mind, because I couldn't do it myself. There was something out there that God was watching over me. And so, that was my first introduction back into God and spirituality. And then I got back into church slowly after that. I kind of had to ease my way back in, and take bite-sized
right.
of spirituality in church. And then I went to the Rock Church, which you're familiar with.
Right.
And then I just started to get involved into church. I realized it was just people like you and me who genuinely they want to be happy. They have family values, they have the same values. They just genuinely want to get along and have a great life. And then more importantly, I would look at the fruit in people's lives, right? And the Bible talks about this. If you want to judge a tree, look at its fruit. And so I would look at people, and even entrepreneurs and people in our space. And the ones that I really looked up to were the people they had not only a great business, but more importantly, they had thriving marriages. They had great families. They lived a life of integrity. And I found out, well, what do these people have in common? And all the people that actually had the great marriages, the great families, and they had the whole package, they had God at the center of their lives. And those are the people that I started to go after. I started to model their behavior, and the level of humility that these people have. They may be crushing it in the marketplace, but they continue to always give all the glory to God and bring it back to Him. So those are the people that I wanted to model.
That's awesome, my friend. That's awesome. There are so many great things about what you just said. And something that speaks to me is, humility. It's something that God always, teaches us, because like how He says, when you're humble, I can't remember by verbatim, but He says basically, when you're weak, you're strong, right?
Yes.
And I feel like the relationship with Him just keep us not necessarily weak, but it keeps us humble enough to be able to say, I don't know, be able to say, let's talk about this, let's fix this, and what I feel the world gets to us is pride, and gives us is all these things that just keeps us hard and cold, and doesn't allow people to get in, and be able to work things out. But it's so amazing about the fruit, and you get to know people by their fruit.
Absolutely.
That's great, dude. And I feel that what you've been through, it's gonna not just help, your family, my friend. It's gonna help those around you and those that listen to you on your podcast. So keep doing what you're doing.
I appreciate that. I was gonna also. Now you when you said the quote about, the scripture about, when I am weak, He is strong, and I am strong because He is strong, right? And I think that's so true, because it was a quote from another book, and again, paraphrasing here, but essentially along the lines of the world views people that are spiritual or people of faith as weak, but actually it's quite the contrary. Because the people that are spiritual are the strongest and most courageous people, because they have a level of faith that goes past what we can see. And that's where real courage comes in, is being able to step out in faith, knowing that I don't know what's on the other side. I don't know what God has in store. But I know He has my best intention in mind. So it's interesting, because you're absolutely, by the world standards, it's completely backwards, right? So
That's awesome, man. So, going to fitness, I'm touching every topic because your life really touches every topic that we talk in this channel. So, going into the fitness route, I know that one thing is getting out of drinking alcohol. One thing is getting out of depression and trying to get, a life together. But another is really taking that to the next level and trying to be the best version you can be physically, right?
Yes.
How's it been that journey? And I have a lot to say about fitness. So let's tell me a little bit about how you guys started. Was it a friend that invited you over to a gym, or was it just like, hey, I need to take over, my physical appearance and health ultimately? So how was that?
It was a couple things. It started off with my brother at the time, who, God bless his heart, he is also, he's got long-term sobriety and he's crushing it now. But at the time, he had just gotten out of prison. And so he was showing me all of his prison workouts. So we would do, burpees, Navy SEALs, sit-ups, pull-ups. And so I started off doing those, and he would take me through all of his circuits that he did when he was incarcerated. So it was actually kind of fun because we would go through this system and we do what's called pistons. So when he goes up and does a burpee, I stand, and then vice versa. And you're doing burpees like this. And man, we had a blast. So, and I started off from humble beginnings, speaking of humility, I was very like old school Rocky workout. I threw on the sweats, I threw on the chucks. I would do runs around the block, push-ups, sit-ups, body weight. And then, shortly after that, I had access to a garage gym that was just rusty barbells, rusty bench press. And that was pretty much it. So again, I still to this day love that, right? I love a good gym, but there's nothing like an old school, bodybuilding gym with just weights and nothing else, right? So that's kind of how I got started. And then once I kind of got the fundamentals down, my buddy, we got a guest pass to a gym. We got a guest pass to 24-hour fitness. And I remember I walked in that door and I was terrified, man, because I go in and I see all these people and like, they're freaking swole and they got their form down. And I was like, I didn't know anything. Right. So, but this is an important lesson, is I was willing to fail. I was willing to go out there and look like an idiot because I knew on the other side of that failure was going to be the results that I wanted. So I went there and my buddy, I remember I was trying to do the seated row and I had terrible form, and he was like, nah, man, you got to bring your shoulders back. You got to bring it to your chest, keep that core tight. And man, I fell in love. I didn't get sore. I couldn't get nearly that sore at the garage. There was it was like next level fitness. And so I used up that pass. I actually got a guest pass at another gym after that because I didn't have a lot of money at the time. And so I just kind of kept using guest passes. And then I finally, one of my biggest investments was a gym membership. And the rest was history, dude. I would go to the supplement shop every day. I'd get my supplements in order. I would watch videos. I'd listen to podcasts, and it just became an obsession. And I think why I love fitness so much is because it was a natural high. It was a way for me to feel good, to have energy, but also it started to develop a self-image of confidence. I started to like the man that I saw in the mirror, and it was just a really great, healthy outlet to feel good. And that developed into my passion. And so, I was an electrician for a year, and I was actually set to go to the electrical union. I was doing construction, and every day on the job, I would bring my meal preps to work, and I would talk about working out, and I have my supplements, and all the guys would be like, kind of roasting on me. But I was like putting on size, and I was starting to look good. And I got laid off one day, and I had an option. It was another one of those moments of clarity. And I said, okay, I can do two things. I can go back to the union. I could try to apply for another electrical job, or I can just go all in on my passion of health and fitness. And so I jumped off the cliff. I went all in. I worked at 24-hour fitness and GNC at the same time. And then at that time, I was training to get my personal training certification. And that was like, after that, it was history, man.
That's awesome, dude. That's awesome. And I think that a lot of people lack that willpower and faith to be able to do something like that. But that's amazing that you were able to do two jobs, to be able to, just to get yourself, kind of like surrounded by that spectrum of fitness, just like all kinds of people, knowing the, knowing the supplements and knowing maybe seeing the people that are performing at the best level when it comes to fitness. You can see what time they come in, if they come twice, what they're doing, right?
Right.
Just surrounding yourself by it just a lot better. When I came to this country, I'm originally from Venezuela. Mm-hmm. I didn't speak a lick of English, right? And I always believed that the best way to learn something is submerging yourself in it.
100%, yep.
And that's how you be able to, you feel comfortable in the area. And now you're personal training, right?
Yep.
Personal training. And so that is amazing, my friend, that you're able to get to the level that you are today. And
also too, I wanted to clarify that. So yeah, personal training, I'm still doing, I still have a couple one-on-one clients, but what I'm transitioning more towards is a more coaching approach. So it's not just the training aspect, but more so it's the nutrition, which comes along with it. And then the mindset too, because as you and I both know, so much of fitness is mindset. Mm-hmm. And so in order for somebody like you to get the physique that you have to have a very strong mindset. Mm-hmm. And so what I help people do is I get down to the core issues of what are the things that are holding them back. We break through those to ensure that you can not just have results, but you can keep those results for long term.
Right. That's awesome, dude. I mean, in the fact that you're doing the interviews, I feel like it gives you a lot more insight on how to help your clients, because you're getting to know other people that are also trying to achieve better and better things every single day. So, it keeps you fresh. So, and that's something I want to touch right now, which is self-development and how you keep yourself, fresh. That's the word that I'm going to use again. And when it comes to, your self-development, how do you read? Do you watch other people? You watch your own interviews? Yes. Through this, I actually learn a lot through my interviews because I'm visual. I like to have these one-on-one interactions, and ultimately it's helping a lot of people who is either watching or listening, right? But at the same time, it's just creating these whole. It's almost like I was talking to my last interview about being I feel like it's selfless not to try to do better and bigger things. Mm-hmm. When you're doing better and bigger things, it just have these what do they call that effect? Like a compound effect.
Oh yeah, like a domino effect or a compound effect. Yeah.
Yeah, because it doesn't just help you, it doesn't just help your family, it helps those around you, everybody around
100%, you. 100%. Yes, I agree. Yeah. So yeah, for me, I still very much am growth oriented in personal development, and it is like a domino effect. It's kind of funny you bring that up because part of the thing that inspired me to jump ship from being in the construction industry to going after my dreams was that I remember I would sit there. We were doing deck work, so we were bent over tying cables to rebar all day out in the sun. It was super exhausting, but I would listen to my headphones and I would play audio tapes. And so I would listen to Tony Robbins. I would listen to different sermons, and then I remember I came across Napoleon Hill's Think and Grow Rich. And that was the first time I was really introduced to the power of our mindset, the fact that our thoughts are things, and that if we want to create whatever we want to create in this world, we want to bring into our lives, it starts with this right here. And so that was my first introduction into mindset and how powerful personal development and mindset is to achieving our goals. And so, yeah, I'm very much, I do books all the time. I actually just reading a couple books right now. For your listeners, this is Personality Isn't Permanent. If you haven't read it yet, definitely check it out. I'm still reading it right now. It was introduced from a mentor of mine. But yeah, I'm always constantly reading books, reading podcasts, or listening to podcasts rather, watching videos, audiobooks, and then journaling, personal development. I also like to take inventory as well. What I mean by that is I take inventory of my life. So where I'm at in my life, the things that are working for me, the things that are not working for me, the way that I treat people. I like to, at the end of the day, I review my day. I say, okay, what did I accomplish? What did I do right? What can I do better the next day? Right. And I think that's a big thing. And something that I've been working on, Julio, in this season is being somebody who's always been growth oriented. I can be very hard on myself, right? I have high standards for myself. And so if I fall short, I know what I'm capable of. And oftentimes I'm like, you know what? I lean towards the side of being a little bit too hard on myself. So something that one of my coaches is having me do is I actually, before I go to bed, I list out all my wins for the day, all my victories. You know, I did this, I did that. So even if I don't accomplish all my goals or my checklist, okay, cool. You know, we can work on that tomorrow, but what are all the things that I kicked ass at today? How did I accomplish? What did I do right? And that's been a great way to continue to develop my self-esteem and my confidence as well.
That's how I want to find out a little more about. Tell me about the journaling. How do you approach that journaling? Is it like what you remember? Is it more like tasks, like what tasks you got done? How do you approach your journaling?
Couple things, yeah. So I have one journal that I do more so the task list. Yeah. So I follow a plan for tomorrow today. Meaning write out all the things that you need to do tomorrow, the day before. That way, when you wake up, you're not stressing out about, oh, what do I need to do today? You're not, have anxiety and stress. It's already written down and planned out. So that's the first thing. That's in more of a kind of a task or a planner. Okay. And then I also have a journal that's just my own personal journal. So I do what's called a brain dump before bed. And so I'll just open up the journal, I put that pen to paper, and I just let all my thoughts, I just put it out all on paper and let it flow. And it's pretty amazing to see how much we can learn about ourselves when we journal, and get all those thoughts on paper. So it's pretty interesting stuff.
That's awesome. Yeah, that's one of the parts of my life that it's been lacking. And that's why I wanted to know like your approach about journaling. Cause I was like, like task I wish I could show you here, but I have the computer. I do have a board where I have like the things I have to do. But when it comes to like expressing myself on paper, I tend to have a hard time, just not necessarily because I don't want to do it, but just because like, I feel like it'll be so messy. You know what I mean? Like like, am I writing about how I'm feeling? Am I writing what I want? Sure. And I guess not having a structure for that, I guess is great because you just let yourself speak to yourself in a way. But so a lot of things that you've been saying, my friend, it's been like kind of confirmations to how we should all approach our lives. And I hope that everybody that's listening is taking notes. Like I always recommend, things that like myself, like I just being vulnerable of the things that that you feel like you could be doing better, because ultimately through humility is how you find growth in your life. Being humble to yourself and say, hey, I think I'm not doing good on this area and I think I need to improve. And going back to what you were saying, I think you were talking about like the willpower, or you were mentioning something around that area. And I was just mentioning to the other guest about the willpower or structure. And a lot of people get frustrated because they don't see growth or they don't see progress in their life. And I think it's either two areas they're always missing, and it's either they don't have a structure, right, or they don't have sometimes you have a weak willpower because you never follow through to what you promised yourself, right? So that willpower is weak. But if you have a good structure, it doesn't matter how this is over here doing, but if you have a good structure, that willpower could start going up and up and up and up. Yeah. As long as you follow through, you just have to follow through, right? But
that's a great point. And I want to touch on that too, because that's been a huge, very paramount part of my growth is building my self-worth and my self-esteem. We're only as good as our word. And so if you're not your word, you don't have anything, right? I mean, without your word, you're not reliable. People can't trust you. But more importantly, when you break your word with yourself, it actually chips away your self-confidence and your self-esteem. However, on the flip side, every time you do something that you say you're going to do, you build that confidence, right? So for the listeners, I would encourage you to start off with something little. You don't need to, Rome wasn't built overnight. So What I mean by that is, take those little baby steps, eat that elephant one bite at a time. But even if it's okay, tomorrow morning, I'm going to go for a walk. Okay. Boom. You go for a walk. And then what happens is you tell yourself at the end of the day, again, man, I did what I said I was going to do. I said I was going to go for a walk and I did it. And then the next day, okay, I'm going to go for a little bit of a longer walk. All right. I'm going to introduce some resistance training. And slowly over time, you're building that self-esteem. So I love that, what you said about, building your self-esteem with doing what you say you're going to do.
Right. Exactly. No, that's amazing. And ultimately, yeah, I read a book. It's called Intentional Living by John Maxwell. Okay. And he says the success is determined by the daily agenda. And that's why I'm a huge believer on, writing things down. And brother, I feel like we touched mainly most of your life, but I always, try to think of like, okay, what is the audience maybe is missing out of the whole story? What is something that they might be asking themselves about either you or a topic that we touched, right? I'm going to give you this time. Maybe I didn't ask you something, maybe something you want to expand on. And yes, your words for those that are, lacking commitment or willpower to go after the goals and dreams. Ultimately, that's what we do this, just to kind of motivate, and also at the same time, just like feed our minds, because externally we could do so many things. We can work out, but if we don't have a strong mind that like we were saying at first, like determination and being committed to our goals, we do all that through up here.
Yes.
We could write things down, but if we're not in control of our mind, like you say, like if we don't have the power of our mind in our hands, then forget it. Nothing is going to actually happen. So take this time and also promote. I know that you have your podcast, so talk to us a little bit about it. Maybe progress you made and things that you're working on. Just take this time for yourself, my friend.
Yeah, I appreciate that, Julio. So, as you were talking, I was thinking about putting myself in my shoes 5 or 6 years ago, right? And I've been through different chapters of my life. We all have ups and downs. It doesn't matter how far along the journey you are on. We're all going to have our good days and our bad days. And sometimes it is a moment to moment basis. But what I found to be one of the most helpful things is living one day at a time. And it sounds so cliche, you hear it all the time. Yeah, live one day at a time. But when you really think about what that means, all we have is today. The future hasn't happened and doesn't exist. The past is merely just memories. All we have is this day right now. And I constantly ask myself, if today were the last day of my life, how would I treat today? It doesn't matter how tired I am. If you knew that this was going to be your last day on this earth, and none of us know when it's our time to go. And every time a loved one or somebody close to me passes away, it's a really great reminder to think about how special life is, and the things that we stress about and the little things that can seem like such a big deal at the moment. When you really step back and you put it into perspective and have that gratitude, right? Gratitude is also a big part of my life. Is whenever I'm stressed out and, I look at my problems today versus my problems even just a few years ago. My wife and I, we're closing on a house right now. And so there's a lot of problems that come with that, but they're good problems, right? They're good stressors. And so I have to constantly remind myself that no matter how bad it can get or how bad it can seem, this too shall pass. This is just one day. And how can you take a step back and really just have gratitude for the little things? So that's probably some very simple advice that I would give to your listeners. As far as my podcast, yeah, man. I mean, I love having people like yourself, Julio, on the podcast who are just as fired up and passionate about life, about the marketplace, about fitness, and about God, which I think is very important in today's day and age. And so, yeah, you guys can find me on Spotify, iTunes, just about anywhere that they have podcast. Again, it's the Common Thread podcast. I'm the host, James Poirier. If you guys are interested in my fitness coaching program, you can follow me at James Poirier Fitness. I'm sure Julio will share that with you guys. Yeah. But yeah, I'm more than anything, I am just excited for making an impact and changing and really helping as many people as I can transform their lives. I think that's the biggest thing, is the reason why I do all this. The thing that gets me out of bed every day is knowing that if I can just help one person today, it's mission accomplished. So that's all I got, buddy.
That's awesome, man. Hey, I really honor your time and appreciate your time. I know that you have your things going on, especially since you're closing at home. Like, I know that's time consuming on its own, and work and everything else that you got going on. So I appreciate your time, and also like, yes, your knowledge, sharing your knowledge with us. But yeah, man, I wish we can have you over once again. And if you guys want to see another part, like a second part to this, just comment at the bottom and just let us know what area or what topic you guys want to hear more about. Because ultimately, like he says, we wake up to see how we can create value to others. And that's what motivates him. So with this being said, I hope you guys have a wonderful day, afternoon, or night, wherever you guys are at. And with this, we say goodbye.